Hi, my name's Eric Hirsch. I'm a professor of sociology here at Providence College, and this is 60 Seconds of Sociology. I've been working for 3 decades to try to end long-term homelessness in Rhode Island. It's not that complicated. We just need to put people in apartments. The problem is we don't have enough apartments that are affordable to people with very low incomes. Let's say, people on disability income who make around $1,000 a month can't afford an apartment. So people often get evicted for non-payment of rent and wind up on the street. Unfortunately, they don't even have shelters to go to now because our shelters are completely full because the rents are so high. I think what we really need is public opinion to change. The biggest problem with regard to homelessness is that people blame people who are out on the street for being homeless when it's actually the rents. So people say it's, that people are on drugs or alcohol or they're mentally ill or they're lazy, all sorts of very negative stereotypes with regard to homeless people. But in fact, it's a very diverse group. There are a lot of single mothers with children, sometimes families with fathers and mothers and children who just can't pay the rent. There are many people of various backgrounds, some of whom may have at one time had pretty high incomes. So it isn't about the negative characteristics of people, it's about the fact that we just don't have enough subsidized housing. If you look at the rents in Rhode Island right now for a 2-bedroom apartment, you're probably looking at over $2,000 a month for that apartment. And you really need to be affordable, we think 30% of income, you need around $80,000 a year in income to be able to afford that. And a majority of Rhode Island households do not have that income. So it's really a question of market failure. The main way that we distribute housing, give housing to people is through the market. And when it becomes that expensive, you have really hundreds of thousands of households. There are about 400,000 households in the state. You have hundreds of thousands of them without the ability to even afford a 2-bedroom apartment. Clearly, the answer is to get the state and the federal government, could be at times even local government, to subsidize housing. So we need to construct what we call project-based subsidized housing. And really that should be by community development corporations, other nonprofit development corporations, and the state of Rhode Island itself. They need to subsidize the construction, the operation, and then the rents of people who, wind up being in those projects. If someone's been homeless for a long time, let's say they've been homeless for a couple of years or even more time than that, they often need supportive services also once they're housed. And so a project we would call permanent supportive housing is what's needed, where not only do you subsidize the development of the project and the rents, but you provide wraparound services. So that could be health services, mental health services, drug treatment, recovery, whatever kinds of services that people need. Sometimes furniture, food, and those kinds of things. So that's how we would solve homelessness. Unfortunately, we're not doing much of that. And because there are so many people who can't afford rents, the shelters are completely full. And we now have hundreds of people living outside in the middle of weather where the wind chill is often below zero. And we're very worried that people may die of exposure or hypothermia. We've been having to set up warming centers. And a warming center means that you don't have place to sleep. You don't have a mattress, you don't have a cot, you have to sit in chairs and try to sleep in chairs. That's, really, is that what we need to do here? It's just not acceptable. And the only reason why we tolerate it and allow it to continue, that people are put in this kind of circumstance, is because we blame them for being homeless. I'll just give one example. About 15 years ago, we had really severe flooding in Rhode Island. It actually flooded out the Warwick Mall. And so we set up shelters for the people who were flooded out. So we actually sent people who were homeless, before the floods to those shelters. We figured, well, these are emergency shelters. And the people managing the shelter literally said to them, these aren't for homeless people. And they were turned away. And that just shows you the difference between people who are flooded out, burned out, and people who just are homeless because they can't pay the rent. So let's try to turn that around and change public opinion and understand that it's the market, the housing market, that's the problem, and not the people themselves. If you'd like to learn more about this, you can come to Howley Hall and talk to me. I'm in 117 Howley. You can email me at ehirsch@providence.edu, and I'd be happy to connect you to the community organizations that I work with that are trying to end long-term homelessness.